Hey guys, it's Matt from Crank Engineering, and today we've got Jake's CB400 in the shop, and we've got a little job to fit this front fender. Tank and fender have already been painted, so we've got to get this fender fitted to this bike, and we're going to make some custom struts that we can use to hang this fender off. Okay, so here's the process that's going through my head. We've already got some mounting points on the lower of these forks. These are CBR 600, I believe, but there's already tapped holes, metric M6 tapped holes here. So we've got some points where we can pick up a mounting point and run a strut over the top of the tyre. So the desired result will be something like that. Now we've got this guard already painted. It's plastic, but it's got a very nice paint job on it, and I'm very loath to scratch it or drill a hole in it. So I'm considering how I'm going to mount this to the fender struts. So I've got some 6mm stainless steel round bar, which we can use to make the fender strut itself, and we can probably heat the end and hammer it flat and make a mounting point that will pick up on these points here, and then file it and sand it smooth and polish it, and it'll look like it's all one piece. We can always just take a small flat bit of stainless steel plate or bit of bar and weld it onto the round bar. Wouldn't matter, either way would work. But I'm just considering how we're going to install this fender to the struts. So let's think about that and I'll get back to you. Okay, so there's a couple more things I wanted to try and achieve with these struts. Now, on a typical chopper or something similar, you might use these coped bungs to mount a fender. So you run a strut up to the fender, drill a hole in it, and you'd screw up from inside the fender into this bung and then weld this bung onto the strut. Obviously that's not going to suit this style of bike, and we want to keep this fender close to the tyre so it doesn't look a little bit ridiculous or like a dirt bike. So I think what I'm going to do is run the stainless steel over the top of the tyres and use an epoxy and glue this fender on. This fender weighs about nothing, plastic fender, so its mass is not going to be causing a problem with the joint in terms of gluing it to the stainless steel or using an epoxy. And the wind load, which will be the wind coming up under this and trying to lift it off, I don't think will be excessive either. So that will give me a couple of benefits. Is one, I can run the struts underneath this fender and literally epoxy them on, and that keeps the profile of the fender to the tyre pretty close. And secondly, I don't have to drill any holes in the top or the outside of this, which will make it look really clean on the bike. So we'll run with that, I think. So the next step will be to use some welding wire and bend that up in the shape of the struts that I want, and then I can make the struts in stainless steel bar as a second step. Okay, so we've made a few different versions and just been working back and forward with the client to get the exact shape and mounting locations agreed upon. So we've done that, and I have been using just this offcut piece of pipe, which is about the same radius or diameter across here as the tire is, so it's been useful to use as a former to bend some of these pieces around just to get the shape right. So I'm going to need to use this to bend the final stainless steel piece around, so this is going to come in handy later on. So we've got a front and a rear piece, the lengths and the exact bend radius and shapes all agreed upon now. So it's time to head over to the bench and get started on the final product. Okay, just a couple of thoughts on how we're actually going to fabricate these fender struts. So we've got a basic shape that looks like this, with using this, sorry about my sketch, using this 6mm stainless steel rod, but at the ends here we have to connect it to the mounting points, and I need something flat that I can put a bolt through to bolt it to the fork assembly. So there's two ways I could do this. I could take this stainless steel rod and heat the end up and then hammer it flat like a blacksmith might, but there's not much metal here, it's only 6mm, and if I flatten it out it might end up too thin. So the other way to do it would be to get some bar stock like this and make a little tab here that will have a hole in it, and then we can weld these onto the end of the rod, and then we can sand and file all the weld and everything smooth. We can put a nice radius on it so that this will look like that. It'll have a hole in it in the middle, and we'll blend it all in so it looks like it's all one piece, and then we'll polish it. So I think that's what I'll do. This bar stock is about the same thickness as the rod, so I can literally cut off a piece at the end, put a hole in it for the bolt, and then sand it all into a nice radius and sand it like this so that it just joins onto the rod at the top here, and I think that'll look pretty good. So that's what we'll work on next. Okay, so a couple of technical points before we actually bend up the stainless steel rod, and I just want to point out a couple of things that I'm considering as I go through. So we've bent up these templates in, this is aluminium welding wire, and I bent these cold around this piece of pipe. So I'm just thinking ahead, is when I heat up this piece of stainless steel bar and bend it around that piece of pipe, it's more than likely going to conform very accurately to this radius. Whereas as you can see, from the templates that we made, the radius is quite a bit different. And again, like I said, because we bent this cold and because it's a different material and different diameter, I'm not expecting it to behave the same as the stainless steel once I heat that up. So I just wanted to confirm that the radius of this fender in this direction here, this radius in here, is close to the former that I'm going to be using to make the stainless steel struts. So hopefully you can see in the camera, but this is not the best fit, and if I bent the stainless steel around this piece of pipe, it would be too tight. So I've just gone through my steel rack to see what else I could find, and this is a little better. This is a little better, and probably the best that I've got. So rather than using this one, you can see this is just a little bit smaller. This piece that I was using as the former for the welding wire templates is a bit smaller, so I'm going to go up a size and just use this stuff here. So when I've done this similar job to this previously, I've literally welded this to the bench and then welded a couple of former pegs in location on the bench, and then bent this around to the inside of these former pegs. And that's the idea, is to give you something as a guide as to how far to bend the piece of rod. So I could do that, but I've actually got a plan for this piece of pipe and I don't really want to damage it, so I'm just thinking of other alternatives, and maybe I'll just put this in the vise and bend around that. So I'll think about that and get back to you. Okay, so I'm going to weld it on, weld the tube on, and just a couple of pieces of offcuts just to act as guides as to where the stainless steel bar's got to finish. So look, if I'm a little bit out in terms of the radius, I can always, because it's only 6mm diameter, I can use a bit of muscle and just open it up or close it a bit. So sometimes you just got to wing it and see what happens, so I'm going to wing it. So let's just get on with it. Okay, so I've welded these fairly close to the edge of the bench, and that's because when I hook the stainless steel over it, I've got to have some space for my hands to bring it down in this location. So I've just welded, obviously, in the location that's not going to be in the way of the stainless steel. So I've tack welded the tube onto the bench on this side here so that it doesn't affect the curve of the stainless steel around the pipe. And these little slugs I've just welded on the back side because the stainless steel is going to be going through this direction here. So at the end of this job, I'll just cut all these off and then just sand this off my bench. So this is what the bench is for. Okay, so the next step is to prep up the stainless steel and get bending. Okay, after making a bunch of different mock templates or bending guides, we finally got our 2 finished pieces, and I've also filed, sanded, carved a couple of little mounting points, and at this point there's just a tack weld holding these on to the struts, and that was just to make sure that the fit was right, and it seems okay. Now I've got quite a lot of trouble to cut these out of flat bar, and it would have been quicker if I had some round bar and I just chopped off small slices and just welded them on. I didn't have 12mm or 1/2 inch stainless steel round bar, and if you don't have it, then you can still do it. You just have to do it slowly and carefully and shape the mounting points however you'd like. So we've done the 2 front and rear, and now I'm going to finish weld those on and start shaping the mounts so it looks like it was originally one piece. Okay, so I forgot to turn the camera on when I welded these, but not much to see. So now you can see that I've just used a pointed stone or mounted stone in the Dremel, and I've just smoothed out all the welds, so there's lots of grinding marks in them. So next step is a sanding disc on the Dremel, and we'll smooth these out. I've got some needle files here, so I might try those first, smooth out some grinding marks, and then smooth out the filing marks with the Dremel, with the objective of getting it to a point where it's smooth and it looks like it's all one piece. So we'll carry on. Okay, so we've blended in these welds. It ended up being the fastest way was there's little sanding discs on the Dremel. Did the best job. So I'm now going to polish these up, and I've already got a video up on YouTube that covers final finish and polishing, and I'll put a link somewhere on the screen and link back to that video if you want to watch it, and I'll get back to you when we're done. Okay, so we're pretty much done with the struts, and I've just screwed them on and just rolled up a bit of masking tape to just to temporarily mount the fender. That'll be enough to hold it for now. So that's it, I'm pretty happy with that. And you might be able to see in the photo, we've tried to follow the line on the forks here with the strut going straight up, and then make the angle of the front about the same. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Come out pretty well. We have left about a 10mm gap between the tyre itself and underneath the strut, so that should provide enough clearance, and then clearly the fender just sits on top of that, such as that. So yeah, I wouldn't have any idea how many hours I've spent on this job. Probably 6 or 8. So it's not something you could economically do then sell on to a customer. It's just a sort of job you do on your own bike to make a custom part, such as a strut or a sissy bar or something similar. So hopefully that's given you an idea in the process that you might use to make it. Again, there'll be links to other relevant videos either in the video in the corners or in the description box below. So hope you've enjoyed that. Thanks for watching.